How far could I go? Spread my wings, I could fly. Our lives, they unfold, rising up, soaring high. Can you hear me? Everybody, feel it now, we're alive. I put my hands to the skies, my dreams, they come alive. Yeah, my dreams, they come alive.
I'm Matt Landau from VRMB, and this is Unlocked, Season 9, bonus episode time. Yep, this one is unexpected. This one is different. This episode falls outside the scope of any sponsorship arrangements or content scheduling. Decided to publish this episode because it's important. It's about parting ways with the things that we love. The episode features Christina Thoreson, who's the former owner of Chattanooga Vacation Rentals. I say former because Christina's company was acquired by a large vacation rental management firm. And as a heads up, this is not an ordinary interview because Christina is no longer talking about operating. But this is also not a hit piece. It's not some kind of clickbait. What it is an honest discussion between two longtime friends about the emotional journey of selling something that you created and reflecting on perhaps things that could have been done differently, the skills of starting new chapters in life. As we all know, growing up and changing in the vacation rental sector is not comfortable or familiar at all. In fact, it's typically initially completely startling and difficult. Really difficult. But what I love about this discussion, and really what I love about Christina, is how she authentically owns her change. How important relationships are over any kind of business title or transaction in Christina's long game. And pretty bluntly, what it feels like to let go of something. This episode also required a lot of courage for a former property manager to muster up. But if you know Christina, you know that is probably not much of a surprise. She's courageous. This episode is brought to you by Point Central, the leaders in smart home automation, and Breezeway, a property care and operations platform. Those two companies have been supporting this podcast since its very earliest days. Each time a new season is announced, Point Central and Breezeway want to support. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. Unlike the episodes this season, we are not starting off by asking Christina what the phrase home runners means. Instead, I asked Christina why she's keeping all these rocks inside of her pocketbook. So whenever you're just going somewhere, you'll see a rock and just take it?
Yeah, because usually I'm out in the wilderness, walking in the woods. At almost everywhere I go, at some point I go into the wilds and into the wilderness, and then I always see an interesting rock, and it makes me think of that place with the idea that like I could come back and see that rock and go, oh, that time I was in Anchorage, that was so cool. Only now I can't tell which rock is from where. So,
And now it's just like a bunch of stones at the bottom of your suitcase.
Actually, my briefcase, which is even worse.
I can just see you walking up to an appraiser meeting and you like open your briefcase and all these little rocks fall out. Oh, sorry, that's my collection.
Exactly.
How you doing?
I'm good. I've been fighting flu B. I think I'm finally over it. I have still a little congestion, but the doctor told me to probably expect that for a few weeks. So,
all right. And how's Thor doing?
He's good. He's really bored. He posted apparently on social media a couple of days ago that he had gone for a long hike, which he does almost every day, and that on his hike he decided he was ready to come back. He was going to come back in the hospitality world. So.
Oh, and any more specifics, or just open-ended like that?
Just literally open-ended like that. I'm not sure he even knows what he wants to do, but I think, he loves the people in the business. It's unlike any other industry that he or I have ever participated in. And I guess it's the type of people that hospitality attracts are just such interesting, cool, open, helpful. I mean, the majority of the people that we've met have been so wonderful. So,
So that's kind of like the equivalent of Tom Brady or Michael Jordan saying, "I'm coming back."
maybe. Yeah.
Now, so does that mean all the property management companies that know him are clamoring for this world-class talent?
Yeah, I'm not sure he wants to do operations again, right?
Okay. What's he
So
thinking?
I, you'd have to ask him that. My queries to him have been unanswered. I'm not sure he knows. He just loves the business. And so to participate in a meaningful way, to be helpful, to keep connected to people that are so interesting and looking to the future is a good thing.
And what do you think are the best next steps for someone who knows they have kind of a direction there? They feel gravitated towards an industry. Is it to start reaching out to people? Is it to start applying? Is it to draw some kind of bold vision? What do you tell them to do?
Well, my suggestion is always, and what I found through doing the EOS process with our company, and get clear about what you want, about what's your why and where you want to go, right? So that whole adage of if you get in an airplane and you're trying to go to San Francisco, but you don't have a course or a path mapped out, or that you're off path most of the time and you have to keep refocusing on that place you want to arrive. So I think getting clear on why and one's strengths, what you want to do, is probably the best course of action.
And you're probably hoping that I wasn't going to follow up with this, but how do you how do you get to the why? Because I'm kind of going through this process right now. I'm trying to really put my finger on why am I doing this? What do I want? And that is not an easy process.
No, it's so hard. I'm doing that again too because of my appraisal business. So, how do you get to the why? So, for me, the first step has been what are my values? And I got this really cool box of core value cards, and there are like 120 cards in there. And just going through and seeing, what 20 or 30 resonate with me.
What kind of
And then
words are jumping out?
um, things like integrity, intentionality, consistency, fun, um, giving back. That's not a one word thing, but using all the things that I've been through, that I've learned, that I've practiced up until this point. How can I use those things to the best of my ability to be helpful to other people? Right.
Mm. And it's almost like those things very well may have been there all along. They may have been there in your previous position, but I feel like lots of things end up getting added to the equations, and sometimes those other things can dilute the focus.
100%. So it's almost like distillation, or if you've heard the parable about how do you get to silver, you have to burn off all the things that aren't the silver, right? So how do you get to that essence, that distillation of what's most important? And I think it's a process, and like you said, it's
Mm-hmm.
a hard process.
Mm-hmm. Requires hallucinogenic drugs, requires months away from your friends and family. No, huh? Could, I guess.
Yeah, I think some of that, well, most of that obviously is self reflection, right? Which is the hard work. And so, probably, I mean, I envision you in an open water swim that you're just automatic in your swim and you're just thinking about things. Is that accurate for you?
Yeah, that's so true. I think of my swimming the way Thor probably thinks about his hiking.
Exactly. Exactly. That was the next analogy is, when we started with COVID and we were so terrified about what happens next with our business that relied on people, I don't know, traveling and being in person, but the whole world is shut down. He went on a 10-mile hike and he called me about three-fourths of the way through the hike and said, okay, we got to shut it down. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, I know that we can't put our people at risk. We can't put our property owners at risk. We can't put our guests at risk. We need to close down the business until we know more about this global pandemic issue. And it was before really they called the global pandemic. We just knew that so many people were getting sick particularly overseas. And so it was that kind of thing. Like he's gone on this long hike and suddenly it occurred to him, this is what needs to happen. And that's that distillation, that thinking process.
Yeah, and it's almost like opening that can of worms, opening that loop, and allowing yourself to just kind of sit in the no answer
Yes.
for some time. I feel like, if anything, it's the focus around the fact that there's no answer and accepting that for at least a brief moment helps separate you mentally.
It does. And I'm terrible at it. I want to know
Well,
right now. I don't like sitting in unresolved, or is it irresolved? I don't know. I'm making up some words now, but I don't like sitting there in the not knowing. I want to know the thing. I'm a real action kind of person. I have been teased in the past by people, maybe even particularly Thor, ready, fire, aim. So it's really important. It's hard for me to sit and be still and not know.
And so that that whole pandemic thing happened,
Right.
and just to
Isn't it
summarize
still
that,
happening? Yeah.
it's still happening. Yeah, but I'm trying to distance myself from it mentally.
Fair point.
That whole thing happened, and you guys fast forward to a pretty pivotal new crossroads, right? How does that discussion about selling the business arise?
It was so crazy, Matt. You know our story during the pandemic, that we leaned in. We shut down the business and then we leaned in and took all of our savings and put it behind our people and put it into a foundation so we could pay people so they could not work, and also invested in a new property management system and invested in a book called Traction, Gino Wickman, and the idea of entrepreneurial operating system. But what that did was sort of set up our company to be in a great place. They say, work on your company like you're never going to sell it and like you could sell it tomorrow. And we sort of toyed with the idea in late 2021. Yeah, late 21, of selling the company, and even had some conversations with Jacoby and Jim Mullen about it. And then decided, no, we're just going to run with this. We're going to keep employing or applying EOS and doing the principles and going forward, and we're going to find an integrator, somebody to run the company day to day, and we're going to rock and roll. And randomly, out of the blue, within 24 hours, we got 2 offers on the business, unsolicited. And so Thor said, maybe this is a message. Maybe we should think about this. So we really didn't have plans to. We really were going to keep running forward and find somebody to run it day to day and, offload some of those things as we grew. And it basically, we were presented with this offer that we just couldn't kind of turn down. It allowed us to think about what could happen in the future if we wanted to do this again. If we wanted to have another company, we would start differently from the ground up, because we accidented into the vacation rental space. We had 2 houses and they were being managed by somebody who wasn't licensed, didn't have an escrow account. And I said to Thor just randomly one afternoon, hey, you just need to take them away from that person and we need to do this.
And what, upon seeing those offers, what surprised you, and what did you learn from seeing those offers?
Oh, that's a great question. What surprised me? That somebody would randomly contact us and ask to buy the assets of the business.
Which were what exactly?
Well, basically the management contracts. So the idea, there are a couple of ways to buy a business. You can buy the LLC or the company, the corporation that owns all the assets, or you can buy the assets and take none of the previous risk, right? And so in both cases, both offers were to buy just the assets, the contracts, right, for management, and then some minor physical personal property kind of assets.
And where does the actual brand and value of the brand fit into that, or does it at all?
Well, I thought it was a really important piece, and the eventual purchaser told us it was a really important piece, and then they did not carry it forward, which was disappointing because we'd worked so hard to make it a strong brand. At the time, when we sold, we were doing about 60% of our business was direct, either people calling us or people booking on our website. those assets went with the sale, but I mean, even the phone number didn't get forwarded. So I don't know how that works.
So the value of the brand in your mind and in according to the buyers was great. And what for you did this brand actually represent? What were the valuable things that went with it?
So I thought the value of the brand, first and foremost, was our team that agreed to a certain set of values, um, and were willing to make sure those values happened for each other, like the people on the team working as a team. That was one of our core values. For our guests, who we wanted to have a great experience while they were staying in one of our homes or one of our properties. For our owners, that they were making great money and that their properties were being well cared for. And for the community, that our guests and our team and our property owners contributing to the community, right? So that it's, that four-legged stool business. I think we're in such a unique position in the vacation rental industry that we have so many clients. We are without our team, without our owners, without our guests, we have nothing. And the community is behind all of that in support or not. And that's that huge advocacy piece.
And I would like to touch on advocacy in a little bit, but first I'm curious, do you bake the use and the preservation of that brand and those relationships and all that good stuff that you've built up, is that baked into a contract, or is that just kind of verbally suggested?
So the request in both offers was to continue the brand, to transfer all of the assets related to the brand. So the phone number and the URLs, the website, and the brand iconics, the iconographic representations of brand, which we, of course, thought were super cool. And that was all in the contract, in both offers, that they would transfer. But what I learned for myself and what made me sad is that the eventual buyer didn't really use those, did not leverage those. That brand disappeared in about 30 days. And that made me sad because we worked really hard to get there. So they were written in the contract, those brand pieces, the information, the contact places, but then they weren't leveraged after. And I think that's sad. I mean, for me.
Why exactly? What more deeply is it? Just disappointment that something that you built is not being used?
Yes, exactly. Because we worked really hard to gain the trust of the community, the people in government, our team, our owners, the guests that returned over and over and over again. We worked really hard to create the standard we thought that represented. Those iconographic representations, they knew if they called us what they would get. So, I don't know. We were no McDonald's, but if you go to McDonald's, you're going to get the same thing, right? No matter where you are in the world. Well, except Germany, you can get a beer in Germany, but that's a whole other story.
It's almost like an identity thing.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And I feel like we worked really hard. Like initially we were floundering about. We didn't even know what we were doing, right? And having really gotten really clear, particularly in 2020, got really clear about what our values were in writing, helped us get real clear about the business. And although we had been promoting the brand and had been gaining traction and ground on that, after that exercise, starting that EOS process, Sharon Keefe actually came and spent 3 days with us. And with the leadership team, we got real clear on what we wanted, where we wanted to go, what those values were. And I feel like that all just is gone now. And that makes me sad.
So you get this incredible offer that you couldn't refuse and you accept it. And what are you guys doing that evening? What are you talking about at dinner that night? And more specifically, what are you eating?
I have no idea what we ate. That seems like about 10 years ago. I think, there was a lot of wailing and moaning and gnashing of teeth about, do we sell? and a lot of back and forth in the contract we eventually ended up agreeing to. And I think once we signed it, we had this agreement to move forward, but we still had uncertainty about would it actually happen. So the actual real transfer, when we did the closing, I can tell you what we had for dinner then.
What'd you have?
Well, we went to a place called Canyon Grill out on Lookout Mountain. That's the place that I've threatened to take you. And I had the grilled duck breast with roasted cabbage with this wonderful garlic anchovy sauce. And I think I had the fried squash also. They do a beautiful fried squash because it was in summer, so it would have been in season.
And you were splurging that night.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We were celebrating with our team. Actually, the whole leadership team went to dinner. So Thor and myself and Jen and Katie. So we had a wonderful dinner.
And how do you present that kind of news to this team that more resembles family? Was that hard? Were they in on the whole discussions?
As soon as we had a signed agreement, yes, we immediately brought the team in. The leadership team actually knew a little bit ahead of time, but Thor and I called every person on our team in the next 2.5 hours past the signing of the contract, because we wanted them to understand our decision process and why we chose to do what we did, because we felt like it would give them the best advantages moving forward. And then we proceeded to call every owner in that ensuing couple of days. We called our team first and then called every owner and had a conversation with every owner, because we wanted to sort of lay out what that process had been and why we thought it would be the best for them.
Were there any parts of those conversations that were especially hard?
Oh, yeah. The people that had trusted us with their homes and trusted us with their family's financial results, our team members, that was tough because there's uncertainty in any kind of change. And we already knew that we were going to bonus our team based on that sales price, which we did after the closing of the sales, because we felt like they were a large part of how we got there. But it's hard to tell somebody that there's going to be a big change and that we are no longer going to be involved.
I mean, it's hard to tell yourself that too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had sleepless nights for sure. Tears, frustration. And at the end of the day, we made the decision, so we get to deal with the repercussions of that decision. My little brother Richard has a great parable that he tells about a farmer with a son who, is the result good or bad? And the farmer just kept saying, it's what you think it is. The son has to be conscripted into war. Is that good or bad? He breaks his leg so he didn't have to go. Is that good or bad? He's training horses and the prize horse they have gets loose. Is that good or bad? And then that prize horse brings back a whole stable of mares. It's what we ascribe to it. And, my mom always said, where there's this much poop, there has to be a pony. So,
oh my gosh, I love that.
I always have to think it's the silver lining thing, right? So what is the positive I can see? Because I can't control the forces outside of myself. But hopefully in most settings, not all of them, but in most settings, I can control my reaction.
And did those kind of thoughts, like, my team that I have spent all this time working with, or these homeowners who we forged relationships with, did the thought that you're somehow abandoning them cross your mind before making the decision? Like, did that factor into your thought process, or were you fully focused on what you guys wanted for you?
No, that absolutely crossed our minds. I mean, there was probably, I'm trying to think about timing. We probably spent 30 or 40 days wrestling with, do we quote unquote abandon our team and our community and our property owners? And it was more, it was more trying to look at what made the highest and best result for every part of this process, right? So what would be the best result for our team? What would be the best result for our owners? What's the best result for the community? And we made the decision through that lens, and also knowing staying on was an option. But I think the business had grown beyond our ability to lead it unless we did some more work on ourselves. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. What kind of work on yourselves?
I don't know exactly. In retrospect, I guess it's easier to see in that rearview mirror, but that rearview mirror is kind of small. So going through the EOS process helped us, but I think I know I could have had better leadership skills. And I probably would have done some more training around that, because leading a team of people has so much responsibility. And I don't know, I always think I could do better and do more. And so I would always filter through that. I mean, I'm going to go get the education, go get the knowledge, go practice with somebody who knows what they're doing. I've always thought that, rather than I wanted to acknowledge that I could do more, right? Always. I think I can always build knowledge, skill, experience, training, expertise through education, through aligning with people who are doing things well. That was one of the powers of this business, is so many people in our industry are willing to say, hey, I had that problem. Here's how I solved it. And here's what I found to work better. I just think that is so powerful, because other industries I'm involved with are not like that.
Do you think that your personal accountability and wanting to make the best outcome for everybody involved, and then seeing what happened after the moment that you sold, is that where like it came full circle? Is that what makes you feel bad?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it didn't, and that's the whole thing with life, right? Is the expectation. That's how we fail guests. That's how we fail owners. That's how we fail our team, is if we don't properly set expectation. And I had a vision in my head of how it should look. And that vision is not what came to fruition. It's different. And so I don't know if, in the process of buying and selling companies and merging enterprises, if people have a better way to set expectation, then they probably get better results.
So let's talk about that. I think that's a really neat way of framing any big partnership or departure from a partnership. What do you think would be a better way to set expectations in this particular case? How would you have done that differently?
I didn't really have any power about setting the expectations other than to the team and the owners, and sharing with them what I or we thought would happen, which we did. But I think if I were in the shoes of a buyer, I would be real clear and transparent about what my plan was, if that makes sense. I think sometimes there's a disconnect between, and this is true in a lot of industries, right? In any industry, between the salespeople and the implementation. So it's the companies who do it really well, I think, have much better transparency between all those pieces. So, for example, when we doubled down on the company and decided to implement Track as our PMS from TravelNet Solutions, they did an excellent job of communicating between the salespeople and the implementation. There was a lot of transparency, and there was a lot of communication about, hey, we're really excited to have you do this. We're excited for you to come on board as a customer client. And these are going to be some sticking points. Expect there to be friction here and a problem here. And this may not go exactly what you expect here, but this is our goal. And this is how the feedback loop works. And they set all that up front. And that made our process, in something that's a hard process, because we've done it several times in the business of changing property management software, that made that process with that company so much better than it had been in the past.
Yeah, I love that. Who would you give shout out to there at Track, who's done a great job with their communicating?
Sure. So all the people I know at Track and love, but at the time, John Stokinger was a salesperson for their product. And I love John. He previously had sold us Ascent Processing and was real clear and transparent there. And so at Track, he was real clear and transparent and kept in communication with the implementation team during that process. And that was just a beautiful thing.
So I'm now applying this to like all kinds of business interactions. I think most relevantly with our listeners, with guests uh,
Ah,
and homeowners. Here's what you can expect from an experience with us. Here's some of the things that sometimes go wrong. Here's how we handle them. Here's, the lay of the land. Because for a new category where a lot of guests are trying a professional for the first time, or really even a short-term rental for the first time, that kind of expectation setting and meeting is almost like the golden ticket.
absolutely. And we kind of stumbled around into that. So setting expectations for guests, in particularly in a rural market. Hey, the internet here is kind of unreliable. So if it works for your whole trip, you won the prize.
I love that. Setting the expectations real low.
Yeah, well, because it was true. I mean, to be fair, out on Lookout Mountain, we were getting from like dial up service. I'm kidding. We never used dial up, but I did personally because that was all that was available. But when they installed the fiber optics on Lookout, um, Thor was driving between properties and looked over the side of the road, and there's the cable laying on top of the ground outside. So, if a mouse bites through that cable, your internet's going to not be great and reliable.
And there's something just endearing about sharing that little detail with the guests. It makes the issue of internet far more human.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's true with any interactions we have. And I think you're right with guests and owners. With owners, they're taking a big piece of their financial assets, typically, that second home they have, and handing it over to us to manage it for them in that space and make sure that it's carefully taken care of, that it maintains or retains the character that they love, the reasons they bought it. And so setting like communication expectations, how do you want us to communicate with you? Do you want an email every day? Do you want once a month? Do you want us to simply put the money in your account? What level of communication and relationship do you need with us to feel comfortable? And one of the things we kind of joked about is some owners were very concerned up front. You're using my biggest asset, my biggest financial asset, and how can I trust that you're going to take care of it? And so we would have lots of communication in the first 60 to 90 days. And after about 3 deposits into their account, they went to crickets because now they trusted us, right? They've seen what the result's going to be. And so sort of over communicating that, if they want that, sort of over communicating that in the beginning allows them to feel more comfortable and to feel like it's okay to be concerned. That was one of KDBN was so good at this with owners. When we implemented Ventory, we had more traffic, more new owners than we could see fit to see. Thor and I couldn't get to everybody. So we moved KDBN from reservations into that owner process. And she was so good at saying, other owners we've brought on have felt really concerned and nervous for the first 60 or 90 days. And that's okay. You reach out to us whatever way makes you comfortable and ask for any information you need to increase your level of trust with us. And that's perfectly normal. So setting that up front was really powerful.
And before we close out this part of the actual sale, what story, because I know you work in your other life. We haven't even mentioned the fact that you actually have a whole separate flourishing career. What's the official title there?
I am a real estate appraiser, appraisal reviewer, and litigation support specialist in terms of real estate value and counseling in real estate.
So basically, you put all that on your name tag. And
Whoa.
uh, what in hindsight do you think is the financial story that operators like yourselves want to be able to tell a potential buyer about their vacation rental company if they're considering a sale?
Um, that's good. of course, I only have one point of reference, my direct experience. Um, I think for the buyer and for the seller of the vacational business, the contract and relationship that we have with our property owners, the relationship and trust that we have with our team, and the amount of alignment between our goals and values and the buyer's goals and values is super important.
So you'd put those things in terms of that quality much higher, let's say, above than property count, proportionally speaking, or scale.
Oh, absolutely. So I think the strength and foundation of the company is far more important than the size of the company. I think it's a lot easier and a lot more valuable to a buyer of a vacational enterprise company that the company they're purchasing has strong fundamentals, is a strong foundation, is rooted in the community, and has a strong team, and has strong owners with reasonable expectations. We saw a lot in late 20 and 21 of people coming into the market. Thor always jokes, everybody wants an Airbnb. Whether, that was about 11% of our volume came through that particular marketing platform, but people were overpaying for the real estate and then, giving us the contract to manage. They were overpaying for the real estate with the idea that they could make $1 million overnight without lifting a finger. And I think it's far better to really understand the fundamentals of real estate, because then you can make expectations about returns without putting yourself in a bad position.
So how would you see the last 2 years through that lens?
A lot of people were overpaying and had unreasonable expectations about income. And that was a tough conversation. And there were a lot of properties we didn't take because people were overpaying for them. And we weren't going to commit to their expectation of income. I'm sorry, sir, that you overpaid for this property. You are not going to make this amount of money that you somehow thought you would. And it's tough to turn down a contract on a beautiful property. But at the end of the day, if we can't align on our expectations, you're partnering with that property owner basically when you make that contract for management. If you can't align your expectation and value system, you can't really work together well. And that was true of teammates too. As soon as we got clear about our values, some of our team decided they didn't want to work that hard. And that's okay. We had housekeepers leave that were like, oh, this is too high of an expectation, I think it's important to be clear. That's the whole values conversation. That's, bringing it back to the beginning. If I'm clear on my values, then I'm clear about who I will work well with. And that doesn't mean another person's values are wrong. But if there's no alignment, it's really hard to work together.
So the sale happens and you two are off feeding one another duck breast. And I'm just envisioning you sipping on your beers there. It's not that far from the truth, right? Unless it was with goats at Sugar's Ribs.
No goats at the Canyon Grill.
Okay, so you weren't celebrating with goats, but you did cash out successfully. And you start to see changes about the company, because I'm guessing you're keeping your eye on things because that's kind of your baby.
Yes.
You start to see changes either slowly or quickly. What starts to happen, and what are you thinking to yourself?
The good news is the day after we closed the sale, Thor and I left to go be with some good friends of ours for a couple days up in Johnson City, and then flew out to some islands in the, I guess, West Indies. And
why are you being so cagey about this?
I think it's St. Lucia.
You don't want to give away the address of your private island or something?
Exactly. No, we don't. It wasn't that good of a sale. We got to go stay in an all-inclusive resort, and St. Lucia, I think, is the place. Mm-hmm. And it was funny because Thor and I never really had a honeymoon. So they put a strap across our door that said "Welcome Honeymooners" or something. Anyway, we had such a great time. So we didn't know about anything that was happening right away. So we were gone for I don't know, 10 days or something, and
Completely disconnected?
did not turn on my phone.
When was the last time that that had ever happened?
Um, Never?
And were you just loving it? You're like, oh, I
Yeah,
can sleep through the night without worrying about a guest
right?
having issues getting in.
Right?
This is great.
This is the jam. So when we came back is when, we landed in Atlanta and turned my phone on, and so did Thor. And, I don't know, 147 text messages or something from our team, from owners, uh, just that things were so different than when we were running the business. And there were some disconnects in communication. So what it looked like, what we thought it was going to look like is not what it looked like. Several of our team left the business real quickly because they didn't like the changes. And several of our owners did the same. And we actually had one really challenging owner who had several properties with us reach out to Thor about maybe 8 weeks later and say, "Gosh, I had no idea how good y'all were. I'm so sorry that I was
Mm.
hard to deal with." So, that's gratifying. We had more than one conversation with owners after the fact saying, "Gosh, we miss you guys," and our team saying. But I think it's also a hard thing to go from, as one of our housekeepers said, "Mom and Dad are leaving." Kind of the business was maybe too reliant on us as individuals. We were building towards something else, but that was the bottom line.
When you say that, I think mom and pop shop, that phrase in the best and worst sense is that it is very much predicated on you. Even this entrepreneurial operating system that you've referred to a couple times,
Yeah,
even if that helps you really break down and identify all the activities that go into divisions and objectives and who's responsible for what, getting everybody on the same page, delegating, all these things that are really valuable to a small business. Even with all that stuff, you still kind of were the essence. And upon departing for 10 days, suddenly the essence is gone. Do you start having second thoughts?
absolutely. Absolutely. At some point, maybe 3 months or 4 months after the sale concluded or whatever closed, uh, Thor said, "Do you think we can buy it back
At a portion of the
at
price?
a portion of the former price?" And we just decided we had to just let go. But it's kind of like when your kids grow up and move out, when my girls moved out, there was this process. I think that's why they make teenagers mean, is to help you with that separation, right? That letting go. Because at some point, all you can hope is that the things that you've done to prepare that person not to need you or that team or that group of individuals or those owners, all that we've done to prepare them for us not being there, that I've done my job if you don't need me anymore, kind of thing, it's still painful in transition. There's a fabulous book that I fortunately read before we got the offers on the company called Necessary Endings by Dr. Henry Cloud. He is a genius. He's originally from Vicksburg, Mississippi. And if you ever hear him talk, I immediately identified he was a Mississippi guy, but he lives out on the West Coast now. And he's brilliant. He's written a number of books, but Necessary Endings is about that balance of positive and negative, or how we perceive positive and negative, in a shift, in a change, in a letting go, right? Letting go of a relationship or letting go of something that doesn't really serve one's life, making a change, selling a business. I think it would have been a lot harder for me to personally navigate had I not already read and listened to that book. See, I both read it and I listened to it on audio. I'm really a kinesthetic visual learner. I'm not an auditory, but sometimes I'll listen to a book on tape and then read it because that helps reinforce what I'm thinking about it or whatever.
And so, where does that bring us up to now? What does the business that you built look like now? Does it resemble its former self?
I, I don't think it does much. um, The office is still in Trenton, Georgia, Dade County, and there are a couple of people that still work there, but not many. Um, and I haven't checked in a bit, but my understanding is there's about 2/3 of the owners still there, or maybe half of the owners still there. Um, and I think they've developed some new relationships. And, right before we sold, Katie did an amazing thing, Katie BN. She developed, I think, 11 or 12 contracts with new owners that knew that we were selling the business, that weren't ready to put their property in inventory yet, but that signed a contract and agreed to let it be managed by us and then the subsequent entity.
Wow. So she brought on those new properties.
Well, and didn't even bring them on. They weren't even live and active yet. They were just contracts when we closed. And what I understood is that had never been done before. Like nobody had ever done that through that, because the contract period was like 45 days or 60 days or something. And she just was on fire to make it be the best possible thing to hand over.
And the relationship element is so interesting because even though Katie may not be managing those individuals' homes or being responsible for that contract, she still knows those people, and they most likely still admire her for the same reasons they met her in the first place. It's almost like these investments in the relationships, even if things do turn and one party and there's a new party involved or things change, you still have the social capital to lean back on and do business with in the future. Maybe that's kind of what Thor was scratching at.
Could be. Yeah, I think so. It's interesting because there have been two instances in my life that really stick out. When I first moved to Dade County, which is Northwest Georgia, is a tiny little county, 16,000 people. Somebody told me, just be kind to everybody because you're related to them by blood or marriage. Just be kind to everybody, which I loved. I thought that was great. That really aligns with my personal philosophy about life. I love everybody, right? The other was early in my career as an appraiser, I was doing a lot of work for the Georgia Department of Transportation and had a fellow who was trained as an attorney, but didn't operate as an attorney, was not licensed before the bar, wasn't practicing, but ran, at the time he gave me the information, was an appraisal reviewer inside the state agency. And he said to me, be kind to everybody that you work with at GDOT because you never know what position they're going to hold next month. And it just so aligns with my philosophy. I like everybody practically. I think every human is so interesting and involved in their own things and fun to be around. That's just kind of my modus operandi. And so I think it wasn't hard for me to listen to those two particular instances and say, just always be kind. And I think our industry is like that too. And I've really found so many cool and interesting people to know, you included, that I can text or pick up the phone and, hey, I got a question. What do you think about this? How do you feel about this? What do you think is going to happen here? And that's a really powerful, like you said, that social capital, that connectivity with humans. I mean, I kind of think that's the secret for life is being connected.
Yeah, a couple consultants I've been working with over the last year or so from completely separate industries have all said, wow, what a cool niche to be involved with. You've got people who are going on vacation. You've got people who are obsessed with hosting the people on vacation and who are entrepreneurial, and how you all work inside of vacation. And it made me realize, yeah, on average, this is an incredibly happy and creative kind of network that we surround ourselves with.
Agreed.
When I first moved to Miami in the peak of the pandemic, 2020, I met this cool guy named Christian in my swim group, and we were out having a drink one night. And I told him that I felt that my move to Miami was the start of a new chapter.
Mm.
And he said, I actually think it's the start of your next book. I was like, whoa, you just like went super meta on me, but I really loved it because he followed it up by saying, you can end an old chapter or an old book whenever you wish, and you can start a new one. And it helped me see um, the grandeur and the perspective of life changes, like moving to a new place, and how they may be actually triggering much bigger new futures. Do you and Thor think of life as chapters or books, and what is that role of turning pages?
Oh, that's such a great question. I think we definitely do. We've had several interesting chapters and or books in our relationship and in what we do for work and what we do for fun. Um, I think turning that page, having back to Henry Cloud, Dr. Cloud's book, Necessary Endings, being willing to let go of something in order to have something else appear in its place. It's like cleaning out your closet, right? If your closet's stuffed with stuff you're not even using or wearing, there's no room for a new thing. So letting go of something else to make way for something, even if, as much as I hate it, I don't know exactly what that's going to look like yet. I think that's super important. And I think that's what makes our lives rich, is all the different experiences and connections to different people.
How do you sort of see your guys' future shaping up? I know you mentioned Thor has some instincts to come back into the hospitality world. Do you think you'll get involved? Will it be a similar kind of thing that you've done before? Will it be entirely new? And that's the beautiful thing. What's your best guess?
So, actually have a call this afternoon at 3 to talk to somebody about blending my loves of valuation, appraisal review, market analysis with the hospitality industry. And I don't yet know, obviously, what Thor's going to do. I don't think it will be a new property management company, but I don't want to ever say never, because I said I would never live outside the perimeter of Atlanta. And here I am in Northeast Alabama. That's about as far as you can get away from inside the perimeter in Atlanta. Um, I don't know what it's going to look like. And that's part of what's bugging me.
Isn't that supposed to be part of what's exciting you too?
Yes, it is.
Because there is something that happens when you remove the constraints, literally and figuratively, and like your future is no longer just what, a version of what it was, but something entirely new. Like probably what happened when you guys first started the vacation rental business. That was like kind of out of left field, and wow, what a whirlwind.
It absolutely was a whirlwind. I think one of the things with the vacation rental business is we grew it from scratch. And so there was some time to get used to the idea of something, right? And implement things over time and learn and build skill. And I feel like it's kind of like launching a hang glider. You train, you start on level ground, you run, you go to a small hill, you learn to launch and land safely. Then you go to a taller hill and learn to turn the glider and land and all that stuff. And then you go fly off the mountain. And I kind of feel right now like I'm getting ready to launch into something and I don't know what. So launch the glider off the mountain without training. It sounds scary and risky. So it makes me want to like backpedal and figure it all out and then go do it, right?
Okay, but you're not going to launch it into like a wall or anything.
Oh no, I would
Okay,
never.
good.
Or if I do, then we'll figure out what the wall is and either take it down block by block or go around it or over it or.
I, on the other hand, have never been hang gliding. How do you describe that experience to people?
It is one of the most beautiful, freeing, magical experiences a human can have. You're flying.
She told me all we had is trading cards and common sense. Nothing that's worth keeping to yourself. Shadow
What an uplifting note to end on. I feel like I just left a therapy session that was equally as comforting and cathartic as it was uncertain and still up in the air. Exciting. And it wasn't even my business that was sold. It was Christina's. My big takeaway is that whenever you start to feel that discomfort, that uncertainty, that your ears should probably perk up, because it's often a telltale sign that you're entering into new territory, that you're about to change. And inevitably, when you change and grow, you'll need to let go of some things. You'll only have the space to control so much. And so that thing, that better be your core, your limited edition core. Which is where I'm ending this season of Unlocked and the Unlocked podcast as a whole. I've concluded that it's time to retire Unlocked because the timing feels right. And I'm sure I'll elaborate in a follow-up post at some point, but the short story is that I started this podcast back in 2017, when the only other podcasts online were Heather Bayers and Jasper Rivers. And man, times have really changed since then. And so have I. Like Christina, I'm not entirely sure what my podcasting future holds. I do know that I love showcasing leaders. I know I'm passionate about asking questions. I know I like to have my thinking challenged as I evolve. But most importantly, I'm learning that closing chapters, even when things are going just fine, oftentimes serve as inflection points, milestones in starting a new book. Like I said, I'm sure I'll post an update on this eventually, but for now, I'd just like to thank everybody for listening to my voice for all these years. I cannot fathom that kind of torture. I'd also like to thank our guests who selflessly shared their ideas, their stories, their failures. The vast majority of guests you've heard on this podcast, including Christina, are members of VRMB Communities, which is our private collaborative forum, where you gain access to me and my team, but also over 1,000 short-term rental leaders who have all done it before you. So if you'd like to continue the learning and innovation in that sense, come join us at vrmb.com/join. I've also attempted to distill everything that we learned this season down into a trends report that will shape the way that I allocate my focus, my resources, my time in 2023, and I believe it should help you too. You can download that synthesis at vrmb.com/trends. Until next time, and keep an eye out for each other. Bye-bye.
Mission bells and morning light paint the pictures in my